Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel Code with Rajeshwari. Today we'll be discussing about the iOS architecture. When you are planning to build an app, one of the most important decisions is to choose how to structure your application's core. Better saying, you need to decide which architecture you should adopt to build all your screens, features, and context. You'll need to know how to organize your app in order to make it maintainable for the longer term, testable, scalable, and understandable by anyone who enters the project sometime later. The benefits of having a good architectures are establish a clean language to understand where is each kind of responsibility inside your features and make each responsibility separate from others to allow testing more easily and increase the comprehensions of the scenes. Make your project maintainable by long term and decreases coupling between the classes and components and fill in your project complexity expectations, and the final one will be separate UI from business rules. This is the mandatory one. Now that you understand that every mobile project needs a good architecture, you must know something. People ask me all the time which architecture is the best and which design patterns should they avoid. For that question, there is a simple answer: there is no best choice. This question depends on a lot of variables like your project's type of businesses, its complexity, and how you are going to organize your modules and where is it going sometimes later. Since there is no exact answer to this question, I will illustrate in this article all the most unknown architectures for iOS and which kind of project is attends and its main issues. I hope you enjoy it. The first one is MVC. This architecture is the most standard one in the development world since it's used in many languages like Java, Swift, and Python. It's also the default pattern used in Apple projects since we have already some native classes relying on its layers. It consists of three core layers as the name says: model, view, and controller. Let's cover what each one is responsible for. Firstly, model. It englobes all the business rules for a scene. All data models and its operations and use cases must be kept inside this layer. It mostly saves the logic state of the screen like controller. And the second is view. It consists of a UI component holding multiple subviews whose hierarchy and state changes according to the business logic operations output. You can interpret this layer as the XIB files, storyboards, which hold some UI hierarchy constraints and properties. UI view subclasses also belong to the view layer. Pay attention that the first two layers implement respectively business and presentation operations, but how to link them since they are independent? This is how the controller comes. This layer receives the outputs from both business and UI worlds and passes those to update the other layer. Basically, when it detects some user interactions through an IB action, it transmits the message to the model to update the logic. When some results is archived in the model, it must update the view according to its state. Take a look at the diagram. By default, Apple already provides us this architecture with Swift native classes which are UI view controller and view. So there are some problems with MVC. Most people place a lot of business and presentation rules inside the view controller, making it massive. View controller is responsible for various types of tasks like servicing, listening to the view actions, implementing delegates and navigation logic. And hard to test. Really not simple to debug. Even messier when establishing children view controller. So when this has to be used, When you have a very simple project like some iOS feature demo or testing an app feature in a simple template, and when you have an rival business roles, then you should go for MVC. Then we will discuss about MVVM. This architecture came to solve the MVM main issues by decoupling some of its scene's responsibilities into a new layer, the view model. Now your model layers hasn't any logic because it consists only of simple data. It's usually a structure. Take a look. So we have a view model and view model. Now it englobes both view and view controller from the MVC. It's only a place to make the UI update operations and layout. Then the model just crude data. There is no function in this layer, just a kind of memory for the state of the objects. And finally, view model. This is responsible for both business and presentation rules. It's where you place all the variables which you are going to read from the view controller to update the UI. You can think of those properties as the screen state. It also communicated with an API service if necessary. So here also there are some problems with MVVM. There are multiple responsibilities for the view model and multiple responsibilities for the view controller. There isn't still any navigation layer, still not easy to test. So when we need to use it? When your project has some simple business logic that demands some testing, not too complex use cases, not a huge number of screens. The app is still in its concept phase where you don't know exactly what it will be like a distant future. So this is where we will be using MVVM. There are other patterns also like coordinator pattern. So this is not being an architecture but a design pattern. I cannot ignore this solution since solves most of the problems it coupled architectures like MVC and MVVM. Remember, I mentioned some topics ago, there was no layer to make a transition between two screens. This exactly what the coordinator is so for. Basically, it maintains a reference to the scene's view controller, and through it can push a new one to its navigation controller or maybe present a new screen modeling. Some people even like to display custom alerts and other subcomponents through the coordinator. So when we will be using this coordinator? Anytime you want to separate navigation logic from the rest of scene. This is where we can use coordinator pattern. And VIPER. This VIPER comes as a definitive solution for architecture's coupling. This time you can separate all types of logic in each class. This way you can make totally independent tests, build mocks, spice and detect bugs much more easily. The VIPER abbreviation stands for 5 different layers like view, presenter, interactor, router and entity. Interactor. All the business rules are placed here since data model handling operations to API calls are error handling. It's based on use cases for better saying. It's important to mention that this layer is totally UI kit dependent, which means it only deals with the business logic, not knowing anything about the interface. It's responsible for the presentation logic and it's always listening to user interactions in the view controller, handling events like view will appear, view did load, IB action, and sometimes implementing some data source protocols or other UI component delegate. It is also responsible for receiving the interactor's use cases output in order to translate it to a UI structure to be shown in the view. The presenter also decides when it's time for a change of context. Third is router or wireframe. This layer has the same idea as the coordinator design pattern, but now is a mandatory layer included in the VIPER architecture. This class has access to the context view controller or navigation controller, and this way it can change it to another screen by pushing a new view controller instance to the stack or presenting it modelly. It's important to highlight that a router structures must be able to manage the screen context in multiple ways. Usually, there is a router superclass that implements various operations for changing a simple context. Next is view. This layer is the view controller together with a new view. There is no logic in the here. It make totally dumb. The view only receives orders from the presenter to render some content based on a view model data structure. Always avoid if else or loop statement in this layer. Entity. This consists only in a data model related to the screen's use cases. Only the interactor has accessible to the entities. Usually, as they are simple data models, they are always struck as value types. We have the several layers which in my opinion should not be coupled with a scene because a different scene can reuse the same endpoint for another use case. The service is more related to the backend than the front end use cases, but it's a topic of another article. Note that all the communication inside the layer flows is bidirectional. The view notifies the presenter with some user interactions events which may trigger a use case in the interactor, making or not an API request, returning some output to the presenter which can display in the view following some UI rules. The presenter also decides when it's time for a change of screens through the router. It's also important to know that not all time the presenter will call the interactor for a logic use case, since an interaction can only trigger a simple change of screen or change some data purely in the presentation rules. There are some problems with here as well. It does not really attend a very simple project since its main advantage is the business logic handling. In a small project, the interactor may be almost empty every time and you may have just a few navigation rules to need a router. Some people have some difficulty to distinguish what is a business role with what is a presentation role and how to correctly separate the layers. As the presenter is totally centralized and may deal with different tasks, not needing to call interactor every time. The presenter might be a little bit coupled. When to use it? You have a big project which relies on a lot of complex business rules and has a lot of screens or modules. Not all the interactions in the UI trigger a use cases, and so in these cases just the presenter may attend that. And you have a different formats for data models and object for the API fetched data, one for manipulating business rules in the interactor and another for presenting in the UI. Then your team aims for a good testing framework, making all the layers and responsibilities totally independent. And the final one will be VIP, which is clean sweep. A lot of people knows this architecture as the best one for all kinds of projects, which I strongly disagree with. In fact, it resolves the VIPER problem with a strongly coupled presenter, but it brings other side effects which I will come here. Let's start by defining the difference between this architecture to VIPER. As VIPER, this abbreviation also stands for View Interactor Presenter, but this time there is no bidirectional flow, it's a cycle. As you can see, the core layers are the same as VIPER and this time we have a different flow. Every time the view controller detects some user interactions, it may notify the interactor to start some business rules operations, and when output is achieved, it sends to presenter and it may convert this output to a user-friendly format to be displayed in the view one more time and always this way. But wait, there is a coordinator router. Which design pattern should I use? It's not specified. In fact, I didn't describe the whole architecture structure on purpose. As I mentioned at the beginning, each company team may have a different way of applying the architecture. It's not written in rock. In my own experience, I have worked with VIPs in two different ways, each one placing the coordinator in different place. Both rely on the way we pass data to the another context. We will cover them. So one is data store. The first pattern of VIP is the data store. The architecture places the coordinator together with view controller, and the advantages for this is If you want to change a context, you don't need to pass by the interactor and presenter to make a transition. But wait, if we need to pass some data to the next screen, how can do the since the interactor is not known by the coordinator? That's where we enter with the data source concept. What happens here is that the interactor can be seen in two forms through protocols. Business logic, seen by the view, which triggers that business logic, and data store, which is a protocol that holds the variables which we may pass to another context or receive from the privates. You can see the interactor in this way as a container made of passing and receiving data in different formats from and to other scenes. So, if I want to make a transition to another screen passing some of my interactor properties, I just need my view to call the coordinator. The coordinator takes the necessary data from the interactor and initiates the next screen passing that the data its own data source. Next is presenter coordinator. This pattern you may be already familiar with. This consists on coupling the coordinator with the presenter, and the flow now stands for View-Interactor-Presenter-Coordinator. As you pass through the interactor which holds the logic and data, you don't need a protocol to allow the coordinator to access the interactor as it comes with the flow to the presenter and coordinator. The only disadvantage of this pattern is that you always force the user cases to follow the same flow, even if you don't execute any business rules, only changing screens. There are VIP problems as well. As with VIPER, it's not applicable to small projects as it's not necessary to divide such simple logic. You must follow the same flow every time, even if not necessary if you decide to use the VIPC. You may many relationship between the layers if you don't decide to use data store. When to use? You have a huge product with very complex business rules and a lot of use cases, and when you must trigger your business rules almost every time when you trigger some user interactions. Then design patterns. To have a strong, reusable, scalable and testable architecture, the good use of design patterns is always welcome, and combining a lot of them can make you a way of coding variable and understandable through the years. Thinking about all architectures, no matter clean or not. Let's take a look at the main design patterns you should desire when structuring your screens. There are factory. This pattern, as the same says, stands for a way of building and linking a set of objects relying on each other. It's a very common solution for initiating each layer class and assigning their delegates and other dependencies. The factory design patterns is also good choice when you are working with heterogeneous table views. Unfacade. This pattern stands for container that reunites multiple dependencies in one place. Like this way, you may have access to all important resources from any place in your application. Also, you can use this in a way of saving multiple related objects in a single class to build a strong ecosystem and facilitating the application of business rules related to that. And adapter pattern. As you have seen, each layer of the architecture sees the data models in a different way. So when you need to convert some model to a view model, that would be nice to initiate the view model with a model object accessing each property related to the previous project. And coordinator pattern. We already described this pattern before, but just resuming, this is supposed to hold your screen UI context in a way of allowing a transition. Then dependency injection. This pattern allows us to have each layer have the other ones as property, and you can inject an object of that other layer type through initializer. Each layer references the other as a protocol type, which allows us not to expose the concrete implementation of that type, only its contract. It's a good choice to provide default initializer passing the concrete type to avoid writing in each type we initiate the class. And dependency inversion. This pattern is directly related to the dependency injection. Since the layer communicates with each other through protocols, you don't have to necessarily inject the exact concrete type of that other layer. If For example, you are testing your interactor or view model. You can inject a mocked services where you may define which results you are expecting in order to avoid your service inferring in the logic you are actually testing. The conclusion is we saw a deeper overview of the main architectures that are used in most iOS projects in tech companies. We described the main pros and cons for each one, but generally, if I could give you a message, I would resume this content by saying if you are just creating an application to test a new features or just a sample, MVC is the best choice for you since you are already testing a separated iOS concept. If you have an app that have a very small domains and it's going to be too complex in the coming years, yes, if you need to robustly test all your features, MVVM shall be good choice. If you have a plenty of screens and need some practical and reusable way of changing your context, thinking about applying the coordinator pattern. Now, if you have a huge project where you want to test all single line of code within the business logic and presentation logic, you think about the long term and your app is about to grow a lot. It's essential to structure a good clean architecture Viper or VIP. So this is content I wanted to pass you on. I hope you enjoyed it. In technical interviews for developers, they almost always ask questions about architecture. My opinion, the most iconic, the most logical architecture is to enter. We will create a project of a new property and we will analyze what is important modules and how it works, and we will try to answer few questions whether you need to have your own architectures or which all cases we will be discussing. So the first abbreviation stands for view and interactor and presenter and entity router. However, this abbreviation itself does not gives an idea of how the Wi-Fi module is arranged. So let's take a closer look, and so view is its own responsible for direct and interactions with the users, like displaying something on the screen to the user, accept from and press swipe, scroll or any other click, and the interaction is the layer that is responsible for working with data if you need to download some information from your server or vice versa, to write the database or read the password from the clicks. For example, it is always responsible for the interactor, and your presenter module is the only component module that is capable of our modules. Think it accepts a decisions on how to handle. For example, a certain button click how to display to the users that some events has occurred under the example of our application and so on. In this data model or service in which the interactor works, strictly speaking and seeking are not part VMware tool, and I think that the abbreviation was included simply to make uh, interactor sounds better. And the last layer of our module is the router. The router implements the mechanism of transition to another module or the mechanism of hiding the current wisely, and in the principle is not authorized to make a decision on the transition but only implements the mechanism, and the decision is we always understand this transition. It is the presentation that the Viper has several varieties. Personally, I like that one which is represented by such an entity called model builder. That is the model assembler. This assembler is responsible for, so in order to arrange all the connections between the components of the module, now we will write a simple project consisting of two and previous modules, but we will start with the preparation of the project files structure and writing a couple of simple services with empty project, and I am ready. Therefore, all that's left is to put some source files into their own folders. I always put the application folder there, like app delegates and scene delegate. Next, we will create a self resource there. Let's throw in our original storyboards assets on screen and a file if info. After this, you need to remember to first of all, if possible, arrange the alphabet public, and secondly, in the build setting, put them a new location of our file info. And the dot sheet, this is the search line, we literally search. By dot sheet, we find the necessary one point and leave a new subfolder. In our case, it is resources. We try not to screw up the spelling because we don't have any spell checking here. Now we can start writing our services. For this, we create a folder API, and in it we will create two services. The first is a server for view the current date, and we will create a second service for viewing the current weather file. To do it, its service and also creation service. In one of the next sessions, we will show how you best create third party services, but in this case we create a service as simple as possible with one by method. And so write the method get in the complex block. We write it in that we must return the type of. Naturally it is complex because it is a short circuit. There may have been a mistake in the keystroke. We'll fix now. If we have a compiler with each computer extra will naturally return only today's date, so that we have types of dates available. Don't forget to write foundation. If we and why we will not erased as I did not, we will screw up, so we just can't get data back to the computer. To make it a little more interesting, I also suggest adding a delay. Let's write dispatch main async, and we will add a delay of, for example, 1 second. So we write, and this will mean that the delay from the current moment in time, and we write the delay that we want to use and already in the complex in the block. We give our data next. We write battle to service here. There will also be a single method that will gives us only the temperature values in degrees. That is, the computer only want the block will need to return an int value. Therefore, will prescribes total and value closed on void. We prescribe the only method of complex. We must accordingly return exactly and a new sum value we will return. I suggest returning a random value in the form -30 to +30. This is more or less realistic temperature value. We will return this value and naturally as. And in the previous example, we need to translate this entire constructions into the block. Here is almost as the main SIM card, the author, so that we have some realistic delay. In the case, we will see and set the delay a little longer, like 2 seconds. So the proprietary work has done. Now let's write our first important module, which will be first module. This displays information about the current weather as its current time. Creation of a new model. We will start with the creation of a new folder. I suggest calling the module block because this is the module that will greet users on the screen. We immediately throw the view controller 3 there provided to us with the code, and we begin to write the protocol, and all the protocols we will have approximately equally. This is the first part of the component name plus the word protocol. Why the protocol use is pretty because we limit the communication between the components, and in fact the each component will know the other only. What is written in this protocol? We write here the presentation is the strong link in Polish module. 3 links will be strong. Then we will also subscribe to this protocol. For now it is empty, but in the future we will here and we will add no, and which it will be necessary. Next steps we will write in a presentation. I will remind you that this component which I responsible for logic business, which have a to return already a weak link to the volume of writing. Of course, let's start with write the protocol involves in the president of the protocol. However, some other spelling is used. For example, they can use not the Wolf presentation protocol but something like and will present. This means the master is going to be a class about the protocol they write. Here I am creating a welcome interactor protocol with kind of any object and creating a class with welcome interactor, and then creating a new Swift file with the name of welcome module builder. Then I am creating a class with the name of welcome module builder and creating a static functions with the build, and inside I am creating a interactor object and router object and the presenter. So here I am passing the welcome presenter with interactor router. So here the interactor is the one which we have created at line number 12, and the router is the one which we have created an object in the line number 13. So then I am creating a storyboard, and we have to add the storyboard instant view controller method with an identifier, as we have created this main storyboard in the view controller folder. And then I am trying to add some presentation logic here. So here we have already the presenter is there, right? Because of this presenter we have to add the presenter class in the welcome module builder. Then finally we have to assign the view controller dot presenter equals to presenter, and we have to assign the presenter view to the view controller. So once this is done, what we have to do is we have to assign the presenter again with created in the line number 14. So once this is done, we have to do an another view creation, which we have to create a router.view equals to view controller. So once everything is done, let's return the view controller. I have seen an error, value type welcome view controller router has nothing. So if you go back to this welcome view builder, I'm going to change the presenter is equals to presenter, and if you see here the build was successful because we have assigned the required values and the presenter router values in the welcome builder. So let's go back to the view controller scene delegate file and try to add some kind of labels or whatever is needed to create to display in the view. What I'm going to do is let's build the application and see if you are getting any kind of errors. If not, then try to create the protocol. So here I have created a welcome presenter protocol, right? Inside I am just creating a view did load function. So in extension, so as we know, extensions are the best way to add any extra new functionality. I am going to create an extension to add our welcome protocol. So I am assigning the presenter.viewDidLoad function inside our viewDidLoad view controller method. So once that is done, I am going to add one more function inside the welcome interactor protocol. Let's create two functions here. One is with load date and the second one is with load weather. So once that is done, we have to confirm the protocol functions inside welcome interactor, because we have confirmed the protocol in the class function, right? So we have to add those two functions in here as well. If this is not done, we may receive an error kind of thing that we have not added confirmed protocol functions. So that's why we have to be added in the confirmed extension method. So now go back to the welcome presenter and try to add the load date. So firstly, means the first module we are going to show the date, and in the second module maybe we'll try to figure it out what we have to display. and I'm going to create a date service class. So for this I have already added the date service class with as a let keyword, which means this is a constant because we can't add the variable here. And inside the load date I am going to get date function, and I'm going to call it here. There in line number 21, date service dot get date is equals to date in. So here we have to give week self because we are using the closure. Whenever we were using the closure inside a function or inside a in any way, we have to use weak self, otherwise some kind of false will come. So we make sure to add them. And once that is done, let's go back to the presenter protocol and try to load the date. I'm going to create another two functions with did load with the date string and did load with the weather. So since I'm displaying the date with the string, I'm going to take that parameter as string, and with the weather I'm just getting it as an integer. So here we have added another two functions, right? Go back and try to add these two functions in conformed protocol as well. Then I'm creating a self.presenter date load and trying to get the data description. Once this is done, I'm going to add the load weather function as well. Here also we have to use the week self. If you are having any doubt like why we were using week and self inside the functions, go back to my previous videos. There I have clearly explained why we have to use weak self or unwound self in the closures. If you go back to my video, there I have added a closure video. If you need any link, so please ping me in the comments so that I'll guide you or I'll paste you the link for the video. Then I'm going back to the welcome view protocol and trying to add two more functions where we'll be showing the date and the showing the weather. And in view controller I'm just again doing the same, which is taking an extensions and confirming the protocol and trying to add those two functions here. Try to take a label. Taking a label to display the date and giving constraints here. So if you are having any not having any idea of what this means, go back to my previous videos and where I have explained what are constraints and why we need to use them in our storyboards, or if you are using any programmatical way also, you have to know how we have to add constraints. Or if you want me to guide, just add a description or comment sections. So once I have added these constraints, I'm going back to the view controller and giving the IB outlet for this. If you are not giving any IB outlet or any IB outlet functions, if you are not adding, you may have not seen it in the simulator or storyboard when you are running any application. I am giving a date label and weather label. Just going back to the view controller and dispatch queue.main.async I am adding because if you are adding or if you are updating any UI related things in the view controller, you have to use main, because in the background you can't update any UI view updates. This has to be in the main.async. Inside that I am adding date label text is equals to date. So the date is the one which I am going to get from the data service .get function and trying to show it. in the view dot show date, and then again here I'm passing date. If I am not seeing any date, I'm going to display the default description, which is no data today, and the same we have to add it for did load weather. So here I'm taking a let temperature. So here the let temperature is equals to the weather dot description. So here I'll see what kind of descriptions or weather integer I'll be getting, and once that is done, I am updating the view with the show weather function. Once show weather functions, we have passed the weather, which is an integer. So why I'm getting the error means I have to add nil collision operation here. So this is where we'll be using guardlet and deflate. If you're having any doubt on this, go back to the previous videos and have a look. Once this is done, so let me see why I'm getting this capture self. So we have to use self because inside the closure we are updating the UI, right? This has to be mentioned like a self. So then I'm going back to the scene delegate file, just creating guardlet window scene, because when you are trying to update or when you are updating anything in the app delegator, if you wanted to see any kind of window scenes, or if you wanted to visually see it in the screen, you just have to add the window scene. This is the main thing you just have to do. If this was not done, so then definitely you can't see anything visually in the simulator when you are running the application. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to create an object with the welcome module builder dot build, because I have created a build function over there and assigning that root web controller to this one, so that this will be the main root view controller for our application, and I'm trying to make it unvisible so that the first screen will be welcome module builder. Let's try to run and see if you get any errors or anything will happen here. Let's create a new group here where we will be having an image viewer folder, and I have a welcome view model builder here, right, which we have created previously to return a view controller file, and we have added a storyboard instance also here. So the image viewer is something like if you wanted to visually see the images whatever we have added in the application, we can be seen here, and I am adding a new file by selecting an iOS and a VIPER template. So here it will be like an image viewer, and once it is done I am going to create and selecting a particular location, so that it will go there and created in the particular root folder. So if you see here, this was done like image view presenter and the image view router. Then I'm going to create a storyboard as well here. Let's create image viewer storyboard ID. So if you wanted to load any kind of XIBs or storyboard files, we have to register the instance storyboard with an ID. If that is not done, then you can't see any thing in the simulator. And here I am going to create a view controller in the welcome view controller file. So in the same way we have created welcome view controller, router, presenter and the interactor, right? In the same way I am going to add the same thing in the image view presenter as well, because we have to see the image view interactor as a separate file, right? So that is the reason I am going to add it here. Go back to the view controller. There you try to add an image view. Once this was added, try to add some constraints. Here I am going to make it with 0 because we don't need any extra spaces or anything here. So adding a 0 with everything, left, right and top and bottom. And go back there and going to create an IB outlet for this. Here I am getting an error because I can't see anything, is because I have not added any class name. That is the reason I am not able to give an outlet for this. Once I have added that, I can create a storyboard IB outlet for this by adding an image view and creating a protocol inside show image with UI image function. And whenever I have confirmed this, I'm going to add it here with the curly braces. Once this is done, in the line number 36, again I'm going to use async dot main, because whatever the things visually we are seeing like UI updates or anything, this has to be in the main queue. Main queue is something like this won't something like if you are trying to update anything in the background thread, so this will block the UI, means the view will froze, you can't do anything, means the applications is crashed. So that is the reason we have to be make sure that you will be adding any kind of UI updates in the dispatch queue.main.async. Then trying to add the temperature and trying to initialize. If you don't know what it is, like I have in the line number 15 I added the initialization, right? If you don't know what is dependency injection, means we have this initialization depend and function dependency, right? If you are having any kind of doubt on this, go back, otherwise you will not be able to understand why we have added a temperature int in the 15 line number. Then I'm going to add the self dot temperature equals to temperature. If this was not done, you can't see any value in the temperature. That is the reason we will be passing the temperature and initialization object and adding a get image for current temperature. Here I am going to return an UI image view, UI image, and I'm getting an error because again I have added a new function, right? So this was not confirmed in image view interactor. That's the reason I am seeing an error. Once that was fixed, I can't see it will go the error. And trying to add an if else function here. If temperature greater than 0, I'm going to return UI image system name. Here system name is something like we will be having some default system images where you can print or you can show them to the users if nothing was coming from the backend. If any data is there, I'm going to add an else if condition. If temperature are less than equals to 0 or greater than equals to 10, I'm going to return a different UI image. Here I'm going to add the cloud.fill so that we'll be knowing like what it is, if the temperature is greater than 0 or less than 0 or something it is. So we'll be differentiate with these images. So let's try to fix this, and I have added three different temperatures for three different images. Then we have to go back to the image view presenter and the same way how we have done it for view presenter, right? In the same way we will be adding it here as well, where I have created two functions, which is ViewIt and getImage. In the getImage I am going to return UI image and trying to add an extension. So take those two functions and write it over inside then extension. Try to get those. So here we have already added an interactor. Inside an interactor means the image interactor. We have added a few functions, right? So interactor dot get image for current temperatures I'm going to add it, which is already the return type as UI image. So let's create a ViewDit loaded function here. Let image is equals to, so we have added a get image for current temperature in the protocol. So view dot show image equals to, so whatever I'll be receiving from the interactor, I can display the same by differentiating with a different kind of temperatures. Let's try to load the presenter in the image view controller. Here what I'm going to do is, let's go back to the image view interactor and check the function was added properly with the differentiating with weathers and different images. I think now it's perfect. Yeah, we have added it and we will be knowing. Just to go back to the welcome router protocol, we have to add a navigation here as well, right? So open image, so whenever we click on any image it has to be open. So open image for temperature, I'm going to get this as an integer. And in the welcome router I'm going to confirm that function so that the error will go away. So let VC is equals to image viewer model builder dot build. So here we don't know how the temperature will be getting, right? So let's just add them like view controller dot present. So whenever we click on that image, a new view will has to open with the selected image. So that is what we are expecting to see. And in the main, just to go back and check, so we have to add a button here. We'll be adding a button with the show image, which means whenever we will be clicking on that show image, so the new page will open with the presentation. And I'm going to create a constraints here, and we have to add the IB outlet for this as well, right? But because whenever any action has to appear, so we'll be adding an IB outlet. If you wanted to use that IB outlet property in different places, then it has to be added as an IB outlet, otherwise the actions won't happen. So when the tap image inside an action method, so we will be placing the image logic here. So once this is done, The method getup and power load, this responsibility is simply to record the event of pressing the responsibility of the present to already think about what to do with the presenting method. Tap and play controller when we call, and here when we look, if you have a president and we find that they have a controller that present, they assigned is an error in the template that I found in the article, which will be attached to the description of this video. The template will already be correct and you will already be able to assemble everything from 1 second delay. Comes and see a super picture. Let's do another restart to look some other pictures again until we could work on how we will release until you won't have a again conclusion. So here you see there is nothing complicated in the architecture of VIPER. In my opinion, it allows for excellent division of responsibility between different files in the structures of your project, and I'm not even talking about the fact that such a structure is simply brilliantly covered. Tests advantages is alive, and traders do not say that you always need to stop personal computers if there is a little business logic in your application. If there are, so you may not many services, or if you are generally a startup that cannot afford to spend a lot of time on developing a quality architecture, when I would advise you to take a closer look at the news or ginger, and because the code generation will be temporarily significantly reduced, test coverage not be quite right for you. It is important to write an application so that it is not only convenient to use but also for developers to use it, to maintain communication more and from such as. So let's try to run the application and see why we were not seeing the proper images. Maybe this is because of light mode or dark mode. Let's try to see what's the problem here. Okay, just I'll put a breakpoint here to debug what is wrong with this code. And temperature I am seeing as 14, and then I'm getting it here. Yeah, I can get the values in the initialization and remove the breakpoint and disable. Let's check. So which block will be getting called? Let's try to check it again. So nothing is called, which means something is wrong here. Let's go back there. Okay, presenter.view.load I have added, and inside the view.load I am showing the image there. Okay, so here I am going to assign the presenter to the one which we have created. So presenter view controller dot presenter I am going to assign as a presenter, and just try to run it again and see. I can see it. Yeah, now I'll be able to see the values for different kind of values. So now I should see the different image. Yeah, that's it. This is how we will be using different VIPER things. So hopefully now you have a better understanding of why we use the MVVM design pattern. I will show you how we will create a project with MVVM architecture, and I will show you from scratch how the folder according to the MVVM. I will call the API so that you guys can know how we can create a project with MVVM architectures. So let's start and open an Xcode. I am creating a new project. This will be an iOS application. So the platform will be iOS, and let's next MVVM demo. I am giving it as a product name, and I am using a Swift language. So language will be Swift here. The location desktop. Let's create it. As you can see, the current folder structure of the project is like this. Everything is inside the MVVM demo. We can restructure this so that it will be more organized. So what we can do, we will create a couple of folders. He'll put all the delegates inside this folder. We'll create the resource folder and sources, all the view controllers, only managers, all everything apart from the resources, everything will come inside this sources folder. Inside this there may be a different kind of features in the application. So I will create a feature folder here, and inside the feature folder there will be different kind of features, like in our case what we are going to do, we will be showing the list of products inside the application. That we will do in the next video. So I am creating the product list. Okay, I am using this view controller class from here to in product list, and also along with features I will create two more folders, which is the view model. All the view models will come here, and the models, only data models what will we create, we'll write everything inside this folder. So this is a structure that we have, and we can also move this set of folders inside the resources, and this project is default storyboard and launch screen inside the resources. So now we can delete this. We don't need this. We will add these folders that we can have created in our project. So you can see the structure of folder is more structured as compared to the previously. So now let me build it. If you see, I'm just running the application. As you can see, it was built successfully. Let me compile it and open the application so that you guys can see how we will do and how the working structure of the application was made it set up. If you have a look at here now, if MVVM demo is one major folder, inside that we have MVVM demo as a subfolder, and app delegate and resources. Under the resources we have launch screen and main screen. In the sources we'll create the all the view models and the models, and let's run it. It's working. So now what we will do, I am creating the list of products. So the first we will be using the table view. We can take the table view from here. We have UI table view. I am using a view here for the header view, so it will look like a decent design. We can give the zero from the top left and right, and height as like 1 2 as it is. You can give this background color to this, and here we can name it as the title name. We can give the product list. We can give the text color as white color. So this is 40 cent, and we can center this in the current review, and from the top to bottom we can get the constraint as 20 from the bottom. So I am adding the constraint for the table view from 0 0, and assistant will use the IB outlet. So once we have successfully added the constraints, it will look similar in all the devices which you will be going to run it. And if you see any kind of differences, or if you are trying to give any extra constraints, just have a check it in all the simulators so that you'll never miss by seeing the weird views. I am setting up the table view outlet here, and we can directly use this shortcut table view. So our IB outlet is ready. Let's close it. In the product you develop the view controller. So as you can see, the table view is connected with our storyboard. So we will create the delegate and data source. For this, first we need to configure, and I am creating a function. What it will do, it will just add the delegate and data sets to the table view dot delegate. So itself table view dot data source which to send. Now I am adding the delegate and data source of the table view. So this will be a better if you are like adding the data source and delegate in an extension. So the piece of code will be separate, so you can directly go inside this and you can debug the things and you can check whatever you are going to do here. Now the number of rows in section, so for now I am returning 1, and here it is. Let me create the table view cell. As you can use cocoa touch class, and I will name it as a product table view cell. I am using the table view cell, a good choice, because we can directly have the scale class here. We can either go with the storyboards or SIBs also, but I'll prefer with always XIBs because we can easily customize the things from here. So for now I am just adding one table and one label. I am giving the constant as the 12 and 16, and let's again run and see how we'll be adding IB outlet class. I am giving the product table view cell here with the name. For this I am giving a name as LVM product name. So this is also ready. Now we have to use this cell inside our table view. So what I will do, okay, if let cell goes to table view dot q, usually this identifier. So I am using this cell. So identifier will be this, as this will return this kind of cell, return cell. If your application is not able to find this type of cell, then we will return the default table view cell, so our application will not crash anymore. And one more thing, okay, one method I have all not used. Let me number of row in section will be 1, and the cells in your rows will be whatever we are going to get from the response. So now I am taking 1. We will change this once we will pass the data from the API, then we will implement this in the video. So we have set up the table view and its methods. We are going the XIB. When we will use the XIB, we have to register the cell with the table view. So there is a method table view dot register NIB and the UI NIB, and we are using the same name in this nil, and here it is the cell registered. Now if we'll run the, let's see what we'll see in the simulator. It's running the Xcode. For example, you can use, I'm using 14.1. I am facing the problem with the simulator. Let me close this. Sometime it doesn't give me the proper results. Let me close delete all the applications and let me run it again. So yeah, the default will be create view model. View model will interact with the network manager, and the network manager will fetch the data, so that we will do uh, create a Swift file. I will give the name as product view model, creating a class name as a product view model. Here I will create a function that will get the product, and once the product will be received, then we will inform to this call later. So here if you see, I'm just adding the table view number of row sections as 1, and setting up the delegate table view dot delegate equals to self and table view dot data source equals to self, and trying to register. So if we, this is not done because we have added an XIB file, right? If this was not done, we'll be facing a crashes. So make sure that you are registering your cell in the configure function so that you'll never have to face the crash in your application. So once this is done, let's try to build. The build was successful and I'm seeing a blank screen because we have not added any kind of responses or any kind of data into in our application. So let's run it. So I'm using Xcode 14.1. So let's try to delete the existing applications. So I'm facing some simulator issue here. That's the reason I'm trying to remove all the apps and running the same again. So let's see. Here the build is successful, and if you see here, I'm adding the color for the header and displaying the text as product list there. Once this is done, I'm creating a new files to the demo structure, which is like a Swift file. So inside this, I'm going to name it with the product view model. So this view model consists of all the logics and everything. I'm going to create a product list view model, and inside that I'm going to add few functions to have the setup needs to be done for the view model class, like which I created the table view, right? So for that, this get products are something like we'll be receiving the product list or images or the names, everything from the APIs, right? So I'm going to create a completion here so that when the completion or when success or failure comes from the API, we should know that this was done. Like we should get notified, right? Like when something is done or when something is wrong with the API, so we should know that this is gone wrong or this data is successfully fetched from the API. To do that, I am adding the closure here, and once this is done, I'm going to create another network manager class. This network manager class consists of API calling, like which can be kind of anything, like get API or put API or post API, anything. So what I'm going to do is I am creating a data from one list of APIs, like fake APIs. So which is kind of a dummy API. Any fake API, let's take, you can see here, and inside the network manager class, I'm going to add a fetch data function which will be passing URL string, which is API URL, and again here I'm adding a completion folder because we should get notified, right? Always this is the first step we should add in our API calls or something which you wanted to get notified from the server or something. I'm going to add a URL session here. This was one of the best way, like we will be using URL sessions here, not any third party applications or any third party API backend we are not using. We'll be using URL sessions. This is the existing one we will be using in any kind of iOS application, and I am trying to pass the URL here, where we'll be passing a string with the URL, and if not there, this will return it from here itself. Then once here I am just trying to add, like when we get a data or any response or error we'll be receiving, right? So that I am mapping it here. Once this is done, we have to add if else condition. Means here I'm adding if let data because if something is there, we should, for suppose take an example, if you have received the data from the server, you should map to you should map the data to the model, right? So for that we will be creating inside the completion block, and if nothing is there, then it goes to the else condition where you can add or you can display error scenarios, like you can display anything. And once that is done, I'm creating a model class. Inside the model class, I'm trying to map whatever the response I'll get from the fake API, I'll be passing it here. And if you see here, I'm just getting a data from a fake API. So this was the dummy JSON fake REST API. So if you see here, we have an API, and take this API and paste it in your browser. Once this is done, you'll see the response like this. There's many products and title and ID, description, everything will be there in this API response. Just try to map it with a JSON map editor so that you'll see in a clear vision, which is like JSON formatter is there. Like if you wanted to see proper results or proper response what you are getting from the API, this is the best way. Initially we used to do this, and we have an third party tools as well where we can see what we are getting the response from the API. If you see now, you will have a clear picture of what we are getting inside the project products, and the total limit and everything was displayed here. Just we need to map these parameters into our model now. What we will do is we'll get all the names of the parameters here and try to map it with the structures. If you don't know why we will be using the structure for the models or view models, just go back to our videos where you will see what is the difference between the structure and classes, why we need to use a struct for the models or class for the view controllers. This kind of information I have already explained in my previous videos. If you have any doubts regarding them, please ping me here so that I'll give you the best link of my video where you can have the better understanding of what it is and what's the difference between structure and class. And once this is done, so we have to map it here with the correct parameters as well with the correct data sets. If this was not done properly, you may receive a crash in your application. If you give a wrong, if you have set up a wrong data or any kind of error you have done it in your setting up the model classes. So make sure that this was done in a better and cleaner way. Make sure to run it multiple times and see whether you have received any kind of crash or any kind of error codes when we try to map these kind of URLs. And I'm just adding another structure with product model here with a list of parameters like the title, description and the price. So far we have many parameters here, but what I'm going to do it here is I'm just trying to display the title, description and the price of the product. Once this is done, so we have to go back to our manager class where we have added response URL session mapping. Here we have to use our product model and we have to link the product model class here. What I'm going to do here is just go back to the view model class and click on the product view model, and here we have added the get products, right? So try to map the response class here. I'm passing the URL string here with the dummy json.com.products. This is a fake free API. You can use it number of times to test your application or to test your skills. I will create here the variable where products will be of product view model. Let's spell it correct and it's okay. And if you do have the products, that will do product request to product self, and here I'll return the completion. You will do the completion here. Let's build it. So where I am facing problem, okay, escaping will be there because it's a task is time taking and we don't know how much time it will take escaping. And also one more thing, let's task equals to this and take about resume. If you are not using this, will not be going to fetch any data. So everything I think we have done. Let me call this view model from our view controller. So I am creating here the view model object work view model. I am creating the function private function load data. You can name it anything, but I'll prefer this one, view model dot get products. If like we are getting a response, we will be getting this callback. We will, what we will do, we will just reload a table once we will get the data. Now that we will do number of sections will be the same one. Either we can remove this because by default the number of rows always will be one, or function or a function. Let me create the function that loads in data, and here I'll pass the model building of a product model and I'll name it as a model dot title. So let's load the editor. Load data view model dot products dot index path dot row. So everything is done. Let me compile this and let's see what happens. And nothing happened. Let me debug. Okay, actually I have not called this function, so we need to call this. Let's see what happens. The application is crashed. Let me debug. What it is saying would be ns version ap current background. Okay, yeah, actually whenever we call this function closer to our execution, it like goes into the background here. So we need to keep in mind that whenever we are showing the data onto the UI, the UI component will be onto the main thread. So we will use the dispatch. Just a second. Yes, below hd dispatch queue dot main queue dot async, and I will load the table inside this block. Otherwise everything will be on the background here. So this will not a good practice. As you can see, everything is done on a background here. So this will not a good practice. As you can see, everything is done and I am successfully able to get the data. So for this video, you can see I have created a view model architecture and I have structured the folder in different groups. So view model architecture will be more organized and it is likely very readable. So thank you for watching my video. And when we will be using MVVM, so MVVM is a very good architecture if you are following a small projects. But if you wanted to test your application components, then MVVM is a good choice. So there are many other architectures as well, like MVC, VIPER and VIP and coordinator. We will discuss in detail in other coming sessions as well. But keep in that when we will be using MVVM, there are many pros and cons as well when you are going to use MVVM or MVVs or VIPER. So if you are attending any kind of iOS interviews, the first questions the interviewer will ask is, So which architectures did you follow so far and why, and which architecture is good for any kind of applications, like it is small or big or any long term projects, which one will be good? So to answer this question you have to see this video completely without skipping, so that you will get a better understanding of what the architectures are and what is the difference between application architecture as well as the design patterns. In this way you can answer confidently which is best for which kind of projects. So let's talk about MVC. So what is MVC? MVC is Model View Controller, and we will talk about history of MVC and why should we use MVC and what is MVC. So the history of MVC is, so there are Racing created MVC while working on Smalltalk 79 as a visiting scientist at the Xerox Palo Alto Research Center in the late 1970s. So, he wanted to a pattern that could be used to structure any program where users interact with a large complex data set. So that's why you should use MVC. So Model View Controller is an exceptionally powerful software architectural pattern for creating iOS applications. So this MVC pattern is not only created in iOS but also this was used in different kind of languages. One of your jobs as an app developer is to keep your apps maintainable. This means that you should document your code, keep your code concise and readable and follow to a supporting structure. So this is where we will be using design patterns. And then, so there are many things, the reasons, so why we'll be using it. So the model view controller design pattern assigns objects in an application one of three roles: model, view, or controller. The pattern defines not only the roles objects play in the application, it defines the way of objects communicate with each other. Each of three types of object is separated from others by abstract boundaries and communicates with objects of the other type across the boundaries. These collections will have the view objects and model objects, or there are something others as well. Moreover, many cocoa technologies and architectures are used MVC and required that your custom objects play in main role. So this is where the Apple structured MVC, and this was the first architecture. So MVC is the commonly used software architecture design pattern made with the following objects. One is models, view, and the controller. So firstly, the model contains the things that are used to handle the data of the application. The models are used to parse the request and response with the server's API. And the final one is controller. The model is where your data resides. Things like persistence model object, parsers, managers, and networking code live there. And this is a unidirectional, means the view will connect with controller and model names and model attributes. These are the ways will be called as properties. We can use structures and classes to make models, and we can use structures by default as it's recommended by Apple, and responsible for the domain data or a data access layer which manipulates the data, and the container for user interface, which is where the UI. A view object is an object in an application that users can see. The view layer is the face of your app. Its classes are often reusable as they don't connect any domain specific logic. This is responsible for the presentation logic, which is GUI. A container object acts as an intermediary between one or more of an application's view objects and one or more of its model objects. So that finally, so the controller doesn't need to know the concrete view it is working for. However, the controller contains the business logic to present the data that is parsed by the model and displayed by the view objects, which means the view, which is like user interactions, controller is an intermediate, and the model will get the updates from the view, and again this notifies the view controller, and the controller will update the view. So this is how everything will be happen in the MVC. So let's create an application and see how the MVC architectures we will be going to create. So firstly, I am going to create a user with user ID, title and body. Then I am going to create a view controller class here. So and trying to add the get API function here. So I am just trying to give it in a normal way, like having the URL and URL session I am just trying. So here I am using a table view. So this table view consists of rows and columns with proper user IDs and values. And if you see here, this is how this was created so far, and I am creating a new file with the Swift file consisting of user. So user is something like the user details which we will be getting from the response. I am just trying to modify these classes with a proper resource files, so that we will be having a good understanding of how we will be creating these user models or the views. So let's take a look. So here if you see, we don't need to write, the extensions will be included. We can add to the model or we can add the object which is the model object. In the model we will be creating it, and the representation layer graphical user interface with our view is important. It works as a presentation layer. So in MVC, since we will be having only model view controller, we don't need any extra things. Let's go ahead and try to run the application and see how we will be getting it. Now we will create a simple MVC API integration pattern. So in this tutorial we will let you know how to implement an API implementation in iOS. So before starting the video, please subscribe to my channel and press the bell icon. Let's start. We are implementing this API integration tutorial without any library. So in this tutorial, we will not use any library to implement the API integration. So first of all, I will tell you that we have, and this is our JSON, just this is our base URL, and this is our endpoint which is post, and we have our model class here, in which we have four parameters, which is user ID, title and body. So let's start the app. This is how the API called and the data is being shown in table view. As you can see, there are multiple entries. This is the JSON which I have printed in the log. This is the JSON. So let me show you the code part. First of all, we have our main view, which is this UI view controller, and here we have table view, and we have set the value of the properties for table view, and thereafter this is the app implementation. We have a post API manager class, in which we have a method which is fetching the data from the API, and this is the URL, and we hit this URL with the help of data task, and we are requesting the HTTP method of get type, and thereafter we are handling the error cases. Here we have error case and we handle 200 to 290 cases, and then we have this URL response string which is our data, and we are passing it, and then we are using a delegate method so that we can use the API. The implementation part, API manager class anywhere in the class, the project, whether we have usaged of this one time or multiple times. So this is how we are using. We have a protocol which we use as a delegate. We have these two methods on post response and on error. Like I have told you, this is the post API manager class, and this is the method model class, and this is how we have used it. We have set the API and we have created an object of an API manager here and set the delegate self. Here this is how we have implemented the post API manager delegate class. Here we are using this class and are overriding these two methods here on post response and on error, and thereafter we are setting the data when we get the data from the API. So this is how we are using this, and it is very simple. No need to implement any third party library. It is very light and you don't have to write so much code for the API integration. It is very simple and we can use this in anywhere in our project. So please check the code on the GitHub if you want to see the source code or use the source code. We will end the video here, and please let me know if you find any issue or you want to ask any questions. Please let me know in the comment section.